a Republican congressman has claimed that sex orgies and drug parties are rife all over Washington and is therefore facing a huge backlash. But why should we find it difficult to believe that there's saucy behaviour in Washington when we know what actually does go on? Hello there, you 5.4 million awakening wonders. We continue to convey to you as best we can the truth as we individually and collectively awaken. Today we're going to be discussing a very salacious, saucy story about drugs and sex and politics. Ugh, the last bit made me nearly feel sick. But what interests me mostly is that I suppose the implication is that there's a moral corruption at play. Because really, sex between consenting people, whose business is it? But, the people involved. We're going to get into that story in just a minute. First, I want to tell you that I'm on tour all over the UK. There's a few tickets left. Click on the link in the description. And please sign up to our mailing list because we've got some fantastic projects coming up. Live shows, live experiences, stream stuff that you are going to love. And you never know when we might lose the ability to communicate with you. So please, for heaven's sake, sign up to my mailing list. Now, let's see what these saucy buggers in Washington are doing with their time. Do we believe them or not? Does it matter? Do you trust politicians? Do you care what they do in their private lives? Let me know in the comments below and let's get into the news.
This morning, Republican Congressman Madison Cawthorn.
Well, firstly, he's gorgeous. Doesn't look like a normal politician, does he? Like he's like a swimwear model.
Under fire from members in his own party after presumably linking GOP lawmakers to sex parties and cocaine.
If he is telling the truth about that, that's sort of amazing, isn't it, that they're having sex parties? I mean, some of you that are more into the esoteric side of what goes on in politics have some pretty outlandish ideas about the things that happen behind closed doors and won't be surprised to hear this. But if he is lying, that's even more mad. Yeah, I've got a lot of sex parties. I'm always being invited to them, do you? No. North Carolina Republican Congressman Madison Cawthorn has issued a statement following his controversial comments in which he claimed that he's been invited to an orgy. Come over here. I was invited to an orgy the other day. Plenty of people are pretty attracted to me. Did they? No. And he's seen anti-drug advocates do cocaine. I suppose what's behind an accusation like that is the idea of hypocrisy. Now, obviously, we don't know if there are sex and drug parties all over Washington, but, probably there are. There seem to be everywhere in the world. That sort of stuff seems to go on. What's more interesting, to me at least, is the idea that lawmakers and people that take a moral stance on that kind of behaviour actually engage in that behaviour. And what's even more interesting is that there are things that are explicitly and overtly understood and known by us that, in my opinion, are much worse than what people do with their own bodies for pleasure. An interesting comparison from our country, the UK, where I live, is that all the while during lockdown, while people were confined to their homes under pain of death and fear of shame, the Conservative Party that run our country, the equivalent, I suppose, of your Republican Party, they were having parties almost literally every day. The only thing that mitigates it is their parties were really shit and involved cheese and tinsel and wearing Santa Claus hats. Hey man, let's go, we're having a party. So, yeah, maybe they are doing that in Washington. I just hope the parties are a bit cooler.
Then all of a sudden you get invited to, like, well, hey, we're going to have kind of a sexual get-together at one of our homes. You should come. And I'm like, what did you just ask me to come to?
We are having a sexual get-together at one of our homes. RSVP. And use what you like as ink.
And then you realize they're asking you to come to an orgy. Yeah. Or the fact that, there's some of the people that are leading on the movement to try and remove, addiction in our country. And then you watch them do, a key bump of cocaine right in front of you.
He's too young to be in politics anyway. How old is he? That's what I'm worried about. No wonder they can't resist him. He's gorgeous.
Cawthorn is the youngest member of Congress, seen as a rising star in the party. A loyal Trump supporter who spoke at that rally on January 6th.
My friends, I will tell you right now that there's a new Republican Party rising.
And it's very sexy.
But now Republicans say...
An interesting side note is that microphone coming out of his head makes him look like a little ant.
But now Republicans say he has crossed the line.
I think you crossed the line.
House Republican leader Kevin McCarthy summoned Cawthorn to his office to tell him his comments were unacceptable.
Those comments were unacceptable. My God, are you wearing a new perfume? Listen, would you like a quick... Oh, I can't help myself. How can I stay mad at you?
He's lost my trust. He's going to have to earn it back. He's got a lot of members very upset.
You think so too, if you accuse people of having orgies and cocaine parties. It is irritating, but again, all of us are drawn to these kind of salacious sex and drug stories, but really what we should be interested in is the behaviour of the powerful and the way that Congress and its inhabitants continually operate and the financial impropriety that defines that institution.
McCarthy telling reporters Cawthorn had no evidence and did not tell the truth.
He's got no evidence. Few. And anyway, aside from that, he did not tell the truth. And mainly, though, he hasn't got any evidence.
Sources say Cawthorn was asked to publicly apologize. Overnight, he claimed his comments were taken out of context.
When I said that there are orgies and sex parties, I meant all over the world. And in films I've seen, like Oliver Stone's film, The Doors, and Wolf of Wall Street.
Congressman Nels, what did you make of those comments?
Well,
The cliche that politicians are cigar-smoking fat cats sickens me. I'm holding this for a friend. Madison! How can I stay mad at you?
Irresponsible. Irresponsible.
Irresponsible. That's ruining all the sex parties. And also, his accusation that we're in cahoots with the tobacco lobby pisses me off too. Right, guys?
But all of it has left his Republican colleagues on Capitol Hill frustrated.
I just think it puts us in bad light.
Yeah, it does. That's not very nice. Don't say that about our sex parties. We're trying our hardest to keep them secret.
What he's saying can't possibly be true.
Not for you, mate. They're not inviting you.
What he's saying can't possibly be true.
If there are sex parties, I'd certainly know about it. You think they want to miss this piece of ass? You think they want to miss this? Huh?
Cawthorn still has one big name in his corner, Donald Trump. The former president announced Cawthorn will be a special guest at his rally in North Carolina.
Now, look, that's all a frivolous piece of fun, and we all enjoyed having a laugh about that. But these are some things that are literally, definitely, and actually, I believe, legally happening in Congress right now. So this is not an accusation of impropriety. This is a list of systemic problems. Check it out. Hundreds of millions of dollars were exchanged on the stock market by elected officials in 2021 alone. Nothing else was going on in 2021, though. It's not like the whole world was banged up in their houses, quivering shipwrecks, terrified to move. In just equities, Congress bought and sold nearly $290 million throughout the year. Do you want that happening? Do you want elected officials trading? Do you not think that that might mean that regulation and legislation gets biased in the favour of those kind of interests? In 2021, only 3 hedge funds beat the market. But in Congress, 35 politicians did even better. Hedge funds that are set up entirely for investment cannot perform at the rate of Congress people. That, in my opinion, seems like evidence of some kind of corruption, collaboration, and I don't use insider trading, that's an actual legal term. But it seems like they know stuff that the best hedge funds in the world don't know. Big legislative events, such as the infrastructure bill getting passed by the Senate, were often preceded by politicians trading in the sectors affected, which points to insider knowledge, doesn't it? Some politicians held securities in the sectors they vocally expressed support for, such as senators holding cryptocurrencies while drafting crypto regulations. I, for example, would like to see cigar companies promoted to the forefront. Madison! How can I stay mad at you? As the pandemic raged, at least 75 lawmakers bought and sold stock in companies that make COVID-19 vaccines, treatments, and tests. At a historic time, during an unprecedented crisis that brought about much division, debate, censorship, discombobulation, doubt, and debate, politicians were investing in companies that make COVID-19 vaccines, treatments, and tests. Do you want that? I'd rather they had orgies. I'll say, oh, well, as long as everyone's consenting, crack on, enjoy yourselves, go crazy. But I don't want them mandating certain procedures and then profiting from it. Do you? 18 senators or their households own stock in big tech companies valued at a minimum of $9.9 million and a maximum of $24.6 million, which is a problem if you're regulating those companies. 51 members of Congress and their spouses own up to $5.8 million worth of defense contractor stocks, which is a problem if you're advocating publicly for military action. Prior to the invasion of Ukraine, members of Congress purchased defense and energy stocks, which makes it look like they're using their position not for what's best for America or Ukraine, as they publicly say, but what's best for them as individuals financially. Many are on committees privy to private information, including defense and energy, so surely you shouldn't be allowed to invest in those companies. These are systemic problems that could be changed like that, overnight with a stroke of a pen. They're not allowed to invest, they're not allowed to profit from it. Overnight, you would get a more reliable government. I'm not saying that it's wrong to have a stock exchange or whatever. That's a more complicated and sort of deeper conversation. What I'm saying is that people in those positions shouldn't benefit from it because their focus is meant to be benefiting the ordinary people of America or whatever company, easy mistake to make, country they're supposed to be governing. The typical US Congress member is 12 times richer than the typical American household. Wouldn't you rather have juries, assemblies elected from ordinary families, from ordinary Americans? Wouldn't that be fairer? Wouldn't that be better? Tell me in the comments below. More than half of those in Congress are millionaires. Nothing wrong with making a few quid, you could argue. But do you want Congress peopled by one demographic that have one set of cohesive, collaborative interests? At least 78 members of the House disclose that their spouses own corporate securities. And that's before we get into the dependent child. Dependent child. 37 members of Congress failed to properly report their financial trades. Did you report your financial trade? Yes, I did. Did you do it properly? Yes, I did. To Madison at an orgy. But the pages are all stuck together. Madison! How can I stay mad at you? So, of course, what we've got there is a fantastic, funny story about salaciousness. Drugs are, of course, illegal and no one would ever endorse drugs. I certainly wouldn't. Orgies, I guess that's a moral, personal decision for people that are involved in that kind of world. But neither of those things, in my opinion, are as important as systemic corruption. And if it's not corruption, let's call it what it really is, unaddressed crime, institutionalized crime, crime that is allowed because it's not illegal by the letter of the law, but by the spirit of the law. Is this how you want your country run? Can you not see a connection between the lives you're living, the suffering you're enduring, the social breakdown that you're witnessing, and having corrupt leaders that are profiting in the ways that we've just described in that video? Maybe it doesn't bother you. Let me know in the comments below, because I think this is a bipartisan issue. This is an institutional problem. Forget left, forget right. Let's get down the middle, bringing about systems, cultures, nations, and a world that we can all participate in. I'm not talking about a centralized technocratic democracy. I am 100% against that. Localized democracy for the people, by the people, like it says in your constitution. That's just what I think, though, and what the Constitution says. Let me know in the comments below what you think. If you enjoyed this video, have a look at this one or this one. Give us a thumbs up. Only half of you subscribe. Subscribe now. It really helps us if you subscribe to our channel. If you're not a member of my mailing list community yet, sign up so we can reach you at any time. I can tell you all the exciting live and streaming stuff that I'm doing. Come and see me live if you want. There's a link just below in the description. More important than any of that, though, please stay free.